Hey ladies, this is Mocha Mommy here bringing you another video, and this video is going to be in response to some viewer mail. I got a letter from a young enlisted soldier who is in the National Guard who was wondering about HPSP, which is the Health Professionals Scholarship Program that the Army and Air Force has that covers soldiers who have a bachelor's degree who have been accepted to medical school, where the Army or Air Force will pay for that soldier's or airman's medical school in exchange for their service, where they maybe will get 3 years of medical school covered, but then they would owe a 4-year obligation as a commissioned officer in the Army or Air Force as a physician. In my 22 years of military experience, I've known many people with this ambition. How many people who I've known received the scholarship? Absolutely none. Zero. I've known no people who've ever gotten it. Now, the reason why is because I was serving at a time of war, and the United States Army had a very, very different goal for their funds and for their personnel. So a lot of graduate degrees were very hard in going from the enlisted to officer's rank for graduate degrees. That was a little bit harder to do, especially depending on what that enlisted person's MOS was and if it was full or not. So military occupational specialty, that enlisted person's was not. My suggestion for anyone who is 18 in the military that has an idea of what they want to do is basically to start asking around the local colleges that have ROTC programs and talking to their cadre, okay? Whether it be Navy, Air Force, Army, simply because I think it's just gonna be the best route. Because I just really feel that those types of scholarships are so few and far between, so competitive, and just the military's goal is its fighting force, not your education. Okay, the military's goal is its fighting force and not your education. So what I would suggest that you do is, while you're serving and while you're a full-time student and a part-time soldier, to one, when you focus on your major, don't just focus on the schoolwork, the academic work. And I think this is where a lot of Black women need to get the memo. Don't just focus on your schoolwork, because a lot of times things are not just what you know, but who you know. And that would be to make sure that every single semester you're interning. Every single semester you're interning with physicians, with chiropractors, with nurses, with dental hygienists, with vet techs, with physical, occupational, speech, and respiratory therapists, with every single profession that there is under the umbrella of medicine. Make sure that you're constantly keeping your eye out, constantly looking for internships and shadowing opportunities. Whether those internships be for money or for credit, that really needs to be your focus in your undergraduate year. So many 18-year-olds start out as pre-med, and so many don't make it. Many of them may graduate with that bachelor's of science degree and then not really get accepted into medical school, and then not really have any options because they had no idea what else they needed to do. So that's kind of why I suggest that even if you only take 9 credits that first semester or second semester, and then get a 4-credit internship shadowing another healthcare professional, that's my suggestion. The first piece of advice I will go to for any STEM major, pre-med, pre-engineering, computer science, any STEM major, please get academic support. Even if it means that you have to take the courses, we used to call them 099s, before you take biology 101 or chemistry 101, to take the support courses beforehand, even if you don't get as much college credit, even if it takes longer to get your degree. Ladies, having a strong academic foundation will only help you. A strong mathematical and science Having a strong mathematical and science background only benefits you. And the reality is, most African Americans, in fact, most Americans, are not prepared for the in-demand STEM jobs that there are of today. So please, ladies, don't hesitate to take those academic foundation courses. Don't hesitate to take those classes. Unless you came out of high school with AP classes and you scored a 4 or a 5 in AP chemistry and biology, I wouldn't even suggest you walk into those 101 classes even unless you have that. Honestly, just because I've seen chemistry and biology and anatomy take so many students out because they didn't have the right academic foundation. So please, please, please focus on your academic foundations, even if it means taking the classes before the 101s, taking those academic foundation classes to make sure you have a good math and science foundation to build upon going forward. Ladies, you would not believe how many people with over 20 years in the medical profession who always says, I wish I knew what else was out there. So many times. I mean, I'm talking to physical therapists now who were pre-med before and then had to take a 2-year detour in order to get into their graduate program because they maybe didn't have the grades. How many times I am talking to physical therapists who wish they had gone the chiropractic route and had been chiropractors or podiatrists. I've even had, as a nursing instructor, multiple students who maybe came into the program or maybe were just doing their prerequisites. One of the things I required my students to do was to go to the in-services, and I would give them like 5 points on a test or something like that, was go to the in-services and information sessions of all the other allied health professions. Simply because people thought nursing was the only people who were making money in healthcare were nurses and doctors, not realizing that respiratory therapists, clinical lab technicians, pharmacy technicians and pharmacists, occupational therapists, radiology technicians, sonography technicians were all making great money and maybe had more of a reach with their talents and had a work-life balance that they wanted. I mean, if I had to think about it and I had to do it again, I may have just gone into physical or occupational therapy and had a better work-life balance and not had to deal with the shift work that nursing requires. If I would have known then what I know now. I mean, you have no idea how many students I had to just help them to pivot. And I was fortunate enough to catch them in time before they were retaking classes or failing out of nursing programs and going back into the workforce because they didn't realize that they had options. The young lady I mentor, she was a pre-nursing student, found out it wasn't for her. And now she's in clinical lab tech and she's doing phenomenal. Married to an x-ray technician who he thought he was supposed to be a physician or an engineer, right? I have one student I took through, one of the only few white students I had. He's in pharmacy school now. I mean, he graduated pharmacy school because he had one idea in his mind, but the reality is after going through the various programs, he decided that he thought he wanted to be a doctor. Then he realized he couldn't be a doctor. Then he thought he wanted to do nursing, didn't really like nursing, went into respiratory therapy. Then from there, thought he wanted to be a physician assistant, ended up a pharmacist. Again, all of these things are so subjective. And that's one of the reasons why I'm constantly suggesting that you ladies intern. I get that grades are competitive and they're very, very needed. Still definitely build those alliances, create those study groups, build great relationships with those professors that you need to build those relationships with. But for sure, intern. With this labor shortage, free hands is at a premium. So anyone who can help file medical records, stock medical equipment, help assess patients or greet patients or transport patients between different areas of the hospital for their testing or radiology. Ladies, definitely, this is the time to go for it. To have that little part-time internship and be that full-time student. This is really the time because pre-med is amazing. It's awesome. But you know what? So is speech therapy. So is dental hygiene and dentistry. So is, radiology, sonography, and nuclear medicine. There are so many amazing opportunities, and you really have to make sure you're exploring them all. Then if you are military, you may want to look into ROTC programs like Green to Gold, just because they see the military, I'm telling you, their goal is not your education. Their goal is their fighting force. So understand that going forward. Recruiters will tell you all day about how they love having an educated military, but right now we're in a lot of global unrest. Make no mistakes, they will pull you out of school if they need you. Make no mistake. So you want to make sure that you are absolutely secure in who it is you are and what it is you want to do. And also when it comes to graduate degrees, know that a lot of times they don't go send you right out of undergrad. They want you to fill some type of service obligation and then pay for your graduate school and then use that to keep you. So again, I didn't go to graduate school right after my obligation to ROTC was done. I had to wait a little while. And then eventually I was able to go to get my clinical data management certification and my nurse practitioner. So again, expect a long term of service if you want the military to pay for it all. It's not going to be, oh, I can pay these 4 years and then I'm going to do this and I'm just only going to serve 6 years. No, you really, if they're paying for your medical school, expect to do 20 years or more. If you are having a graduate degree that is funded by the United States military, expect to retire. That's just how it is. They want every single thing out of you. That's just not, the military is not in the business of education. The military is in the business of their fighting force. So just be aware of that. Like all of those men who went to West Point and then served and then became physicians, because that's really where they get most of their physicians from, the commissioned officer staff already, who has the MCAT or the GRE scores to get into those graduate programs. That's really, and who already done with their obligation. That's where they get, that's really where HSPS really gets their recruits, not from the enlisteds. I hate to tell you that, but I'm going to be honest. That's really where they get them from. The guys who come out of West Point, the guys and girls who come out of West Point, who finish their obligation already and then apply to medical school. So expect there to be a gap. You'll still be very young if you're 18 now. You'll still be very young. You'll still be going into medical school at 24, 25 years old, and you won't be missing a beat, and you won't have $100,000 plus in student loans, whether it be medical school, dental school, but be sure. So basically my advice would be to any college student and any soldier, just make sure that you're exploring all of your options, making sure that if you're a part-time soldier and a full-time student, that you're always, always, always interning, shadowing, answering questions, and talking to the people in the places where you want to go, as opposed to talking to your direct chain of command. Remember, there's a lot of haters, especially if you're Air Force. Shade, no shade. So anyway, make sure that you're talking to ROTC cadre. Make sure you're talking to students and cadets. Make sure you're talking to military academy graduates. Make sure that you're talking to people who are veterans in their designated medical fields. Make sure you're talking to department heads of different medical facilities. Like, for instance, your dean of pharmacy school, your dean of the medical school, any of your academic advisors that take care of pre-med students or physical therapy or dental students or even veterinary students. Make sure you're getting as much information as you can, because declaring a major at 18 where the Army's funding it, understand that you may not get a chance to reset. Also understand that if you want the Army to pay for your graduate school, expect to do 20 years. Do I regret it? Absolutely not. I'm still reaping the benefits from the service, my military service. And so are my children, now that they're looking at possibly refinancing cars, possibly buying a home in the future, and knowing that my later golden years, they don't have to cover expensive nursing home care, my burial, or any expensive prescriptions I may need as I age, because that's all going to be covered by the VA and my military retirement funds. So just knowing that I won't be a burden on them in my later years, so that they can establish their future, whether or not they decide to enlist, to get commissioned or not. So I definitely don't regret it, but I definitely know that those are things that you may need to know moving forward. So ladies, just keep in mind, if you're thinking about having the military finance your education, to make sure that you're looking at everything. Expect for there to be gaps in your education and service, and not to be a consecutive student all the way through, especially if you're looking at graduate degrees. It's definitely one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life, but I have to let you know that it is there are some challenges involved. And even if you really think about it, I mean, if you're single in your late teens, this is going to be the time of your life where you're probably going to be around the most gainfully employed men you'll ever be in your life. Like, seriously. So definitely make sure, and the ratio favors you. So definitely make sure that you're exploring your options in that arena as well. So that's just advice responding to viewer mail. And I hope that you ladies take this seriously. Forward it to those sisters, nieces, cousins, and even to some of you young subscribers and listeners. Consider it yourselves, because the military was definitely one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. It's something I will always look back on my service fondly, and I'm proud to be a veteran of the United States Army. Something I definitely would encourage you to do if you feel that serving your country, getting an education, making new friends, and traveling is something you want to do in your younger years. So this is Mocha Mommy, and I'll see you in the next video.